coverage. We have Bryan Rotella on. He's a healthcare expert, attorney, and founder of CEO and senior partner at Genco. Bryan, welcome back. Were you surprised by the decision?
Well, hey, Brian, I was not surprised by the decision because, let's be honest, the Supreme Court said they could write a book on near-death experiences over Obamacare. They've tried to resuscitate this thing and make sure it doesn't go to the light now 3 times. So I don't know that any of us thought that this was going to turn out in a way that they were going to repeal Obamacare. What I was surprised by is what actually happened here. And I was listening to Carrie Severino in the lead-in. Yeah, remember the whole hype about Justice Coney Barrett and that if you voted for Trump and Coney Barrett got on the court, all this health care was going to go away? That was extremely overhyped. She voted with the majority. So did Justice Kavanaugh. The only 2 who voted or dissented were Justice Alito and Justice Gorsuch. And, Brian, what they dissented on was really the whole issue of this. The court ruled on this that they didn't have standing, that the states that brought this lawsuit did not have standing to bring it because they weren't harmed. Nobody got into whether it was constitutional or not, the individual mandate, whether it was legal or not, whether now that there's no tax, because remember the Trump Act, the Tax Act set the tax to 0, the individual mandate. They didn't go there. They just simply said these states weren't harmed. Now, you know how crazy and ridiculous it is, and that is what surprised me, that they literally said, hey, no Little League game, we think there might be rain tomorrow. The reason that this surprised me so much is 18 states who brought this case have had to play by the, remember, essential health care benefits in Obamacare, including things like birth control and all the stuff, men's health, prostate type stuff. They've had to provide that to millions of state employees because Obamacare has been in existence since 2010. Overseeing that for all of these state employees, how they don't have harm, I can't tell you how many lawsuits I've been a part of that have got through motions to dismiss with a lot less than that. That is the sole reason your audience needs to know why the court yesterday ruled the way they did and why Obamacare, I think, is now going to live forever.
Probably. And now there's a big push to either get rid of it or improve it because obviously it's not hitting on all cylinders. The deductibles are too high. Doctors don't want to take it. It always seems to be the last option. Some of the states never took their money because they don't want to be on the hook when the federal government starts paying them. So we forgot Obamacare was unpopular for a reason, not for a political reason, but it wasn't that effective.
Yeah, well, Brian, this is the thing that a lot of people don't know. What's happened since 2013 to 2019, premiums have doubled in the individual market. Why aren't people feeling that and we don't have the rage we saw in 2016? The subsidies out of the federal coffers, the taxpayer dollars, are matching dollar for dollar. So what is happening through Obamacare is what the Democrats have been asking for, a complete takeover of the government in our healthcare system and taking the employer-run, employee-paid, where we share contributions run healthcare system we've had for how many years away. Now the government is paying big health insurance companies. Now, I know there's some good health insurance companies out there, but I think the American people should know that's what's going on. And the reason you aren't hearing an outrage about this is these premiums are flying up, but people aren't feeling them because of the tax dollars going in for all these subsidies.
Very interesting. So we have this whole vaccine debate now. Do you want to go to a game? You got to get vaccinated. Do you want to get on a plane? Soon we're going to have to get vaccinated, perhaps. You got to go back to college. You got to get vaccinated. You're an attorney along with a healthcare expert. Do I have a leg to stand on if I want to go back to school and they say no, it's a private university, and I say I'm not comfortable with vaccines and they say get comfortable?
You do have a leg to stand on, but here's the problem. And there's 2 things going on. There's a case down here in Florida with our cruise lines. There's a difference between when the CDC, what they're doing with our cruise lines down here, and DeSantis, our governor, is challenging it. The CDC is saying, no, you can't cruise unless you have 95% of folks vaccinated or you do some type of 2-day practice cruise. I don't know if it's like Gilligan's Island or something. The CDC is saying that. That is government overreach. I think that DeSantis is going to win that in our courts down here, Brian, because the government can't make those types of things. Now, I know that sounds crazy after what we've seen over the last 18 months. What you're talking about, though, with the schools or a private employer, private employers can require vaccinations. Now, here's the issue. What if I'm somebody who might have an allergy to a vaccination? What if I'm somebody who simply, if I'm concerned about taking the vaccine because I have some type of disability? Well, those are your legs to stand on as far as if you want to try to go to that school or you want to work for that particular employer, or if you say, hey, I'm not allowed into this restaurant, but you're discriminating against me. What do I always talk about, Brian, and what worries me about this? What are we setting up? A trial lawyer feeding frenzy.
Yep.
Anybody out there, just Google COVID lawsuits, because you know who the only folks who got immunity in this thing? Pharma, Pfizer, and Moderna. So if that,
which is why they rushed it through and were willing to take the risk. So it's
exactly.
not, yeah. So real quick, on the cruise industry, where do we stand right now? Because obviously it means so much to Florida in particular and those different countries, especially the international cruises, but where the vaccine is being challenged. The governor in your state wants people to make their own decisions.
Yeah, well, I think the governor's going to win, because what's crazy, and I've said this recently, we've had Disney World open here in Florida since July. Now, anyone who's been to Disney World, you with the masks on, you didn't have to have any vaccine. It's hot, it's humid, you're pulling on your mask. Nobody can tell me that is more safe than being on a cruise out in open air where you're vaccinated.
Of course.
And the CDC saying this, the Judge Merriday here in the Middle District of Florida seemed very, very skeptical. I think that the state's going to win this here because this is clear government overreach. How can the government pick winners and losers, not even between companies, but within a type of entertainment venue? When I mentioned Disney World, well, think about Disney cruises. No one can get vaccinated who's under 12. Should the government be deciding if kids can go on cruises or not?
Yeah, it's crazy. I want you to hear this Alita Parasuk. Her son is being punished by West Point because he's not taking the vaccine. She feels helpless. Cut 39.
He didn't want to take the vaccine, so he didn't take the vaccine. He has been tested there on post and has antibodies. So he was counseled before he left West Point by his tactical officer, who told him that because he'd chosen to exercise his right to not take the vaccine, that he would be called a susceptible status. He'd have a susceptible status, and that he would have to submit to restriction of movement throughout the summer, which meant that he would have to give up some of his leave.
So why is he put in that spot? Why do they have to make that choice? I can't believe this is West Point.
Yeah, to me, this is we're going to have to look back on this in 20 or 50 years, and it's going to look Orwellian.
Well, he's got antibodies. If he signed you and you were his lawyer, what would you do?
If I was his lawyer, I would be making the argument that, again, what you just simply said, he has the antibodies. And again, putting people through, and it gets into this whole emergency as compared to fully FDA approved thing with the vaccines, but he should have the choice. And is COVID-19 at this point in history, in June of 2021, is it that type of public threat that this person should have to take the vaccine to be able to go to West Point? We are not in March 2020. We are not in April 2020, Brian, anymore. And that's what I think the courts are going to start looking at very carefully. The numbers have changed dramatically, and the government's strength needs to come out of this as if we're in the Black Plague. It cannot be played that way anymore, and you're going to start hearing a lot of lawyers arguing that, I hope. Yeah.
Here's another parent of West Point. Cut 40.
I don't understand what the leadership at West Point is doing right now. So quick thing on my daughter. She loves the Lord. She loves her country. And all she wants to do, her dream, is just to serve both at West Point right now. She's in a position where she's had COVID. She recovered from COVID. She has the antibodies for COVID. And West Point is putting a ridiculous amount of pressure on her to take the vaccine for COVID.
Your thoughts?
Basically repeated what I just said, but I agree completely. They have the antibodies, and it's June of 2021. I mean, again, I'm not the scientist, but if I put experts on the stand, I think you're going to have a compelling argument that she's every bit as immune as somebody who has the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. Plus, you're not putting them at risk of some of these potential side effects. And again, I'm pro-vaccine. I'm vaccinated. But making that argument, this person can't go to West Point when they have the antibodies in June of 2021, that to me is going to be what the courts are going to have to look at. Where are we now, and what is the science now as compared to March 2020? Yeah,
we'll see how this all turns out. Bryan Rotella, thanks so much.
Always a pleasure, Brian.
All right, attorney, founder, CEO, a senior partner of Genco. When we come back, Lee Habib joins.